Did you know the early church faced a crisis so profound it could have changed Christianity forever? Imagine heated debates, cultural clashes, and decisions that hung by a thread. What if unity had failed? Stay tuned because we're diving into the controversies that shaped the church's destiny and how they still impact us today. What were these pivotal moments? Please watch the end of the video to discover the decisions that could unify or break the early Christian world. Welcome to Ancient Faith Explorations. Today, we're unraveling one of the most compelling mysteries of early Christianity, the battles over belief and unity that forged the church as we know it. These struggles don't just belong to the past. They echo in how we understand Christian unity today. As you watch, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think was the greatest challenge to early church unity? Let's explore this together. Part 1. The challenges faced by the early church. Imagine a time when the future of Christianity hung by a thread. The early church, a fragile yet vibrant community, was on the brink of collapse. Cultural clashes, theological disputes, and unanswerable questions threatened to tear it apart. What if they couldn't find common ground? What would Christianity look like today? Stay with me as we uncover the hidden struggles and courageous decisions that saved the church. So, how did these early Christians overcome such overwhelming odds? Let's dive into their story to find out. Close your eyes and picture this. A bustling Roman city, diverse voices in crowded homes, and believers from every walk of life, Jews, Greeks, Romans, and more. The early church was a mosaic of cultures, languages, and beliefs. Their shared faith in Christ brought them together, but their interpretations of his teachings often collided like waves against a rocky shore. Imagine the debates. Should Gentiles follow Jewish law? Were dietary restrictions and circumcision still necessary? Or what did it mean to truly follow Christ? These weren't trivial disagreements. They struck at the heart of what it meant to be a Christian. Visualize. Early believers gathered in small, candlelit rooms, their faces illuminated by flickering flames as they debated passionately. You can almost hear the clash of perspectives, the mix of languages, and the fervent prayers for guidance. The stakes were monumental. Without unity, the church risked splintering into irrelevance. The divisions weren't just theological. They were deeply cultural. Jewish Christians, steeped in centuries of tradition, often clashed with Gentile converts who brought their own customs and practices. It was a storm waiting to happen. If you were in their shoes, how would you have handled such profound differences? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Amidst the chaos, leaders rose to the challenge. Figures like Peter, Paul, and James didn't shy away from these disputes. They tackled them head-on, knowing the future of the church depended on finding common ground. Let's dive deeper into one of the most pivotal moments in early church history, a controversy that shook its foundations and forever altered its course. Picture this. Peter, a devout Jew and one of Christ's closest followers, has a vision. In this vision, a great sheet descends from heaven, filled with animals of every kind, including those considered unclean by Jewish law. A voice commands, "Get up, Peter. Kill and eat." Shocked, Peter responds, "Surely not, Lord. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." But the voice speaks again, with words that echo through history. "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." Acts 10 verses 9 to 16. This vision wasn't just a personal revelation. It was a seismic shift in understanding. For centuries, Jewish dietary laws had been a cornerstone of identity and faith, a sacred tradition that defined who was in and who was out. Yet here, Peter was being called to break those barriers, to welcome the unclean into the fold without imposing the weight of ancient customs upon them. Imagine the tension as Peter shared this vision with other leaders. Imagine the whispered doubts, the raised eyebrows, the hushed debates behind closed doors. Was this truly from God? Could they trust Peter's account? The decision to accept Gentiles without requiring adherence to Jewish law was nothing short of revolutionary. It wasn't just about food. It was about identity, belonging, and the very definition of faith itself. This moment became a cornerstone for the early church. Peter's bold proclamation, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean," wasn't just a theological statement. It was a radical act of inclusion, a declaration that the grace of God was boundless and universal. It shattered centuries-old divisions and laid the groundwork for a church that could embrace all nations, tribes, and tongues. But let's not stop there. This was just one battle in a much larger war for unity and identity. The early church faced countless other challenges, each as contentious and transformative as Peter's vision. From disputes over circumcision to debates about the nature of Christ himself, the early believers had to navigate treacherous waters to keep the faith alive. So, what do you think? Was this cultural collision the most significant challenge the early church faced, or were there even greater battles? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. And if this story has sparked your interest, don't forget to like and share this video so more people can join the conversation. In the next segment, we'll delve into even more fiery debates and crucial decisions that shape the church as we know it. Don't miss it. The story only gets more intriguing from here. Part 2. The debates over the nature of Christianity. Imagine a world where the very essence of your faith is up for debate. Voices clash, arguments ignite, and the future of the church hangs by a thread. Can you feel the tension? This was a reality for the early church as it grappled with questions that could either unify or shatter it. Today, we're diving into one of the most heated chapters in Christian history, debates that define the nature of Christianity itself. Let's travel back to 325 AD, to the Council of Nicaea. Picture a vast chamber filled with bishops from across the Roman Empire, their faces stern, their voices loud. Scrolls lay unrolled, inkwells scratching down fervent arguments. The air is thick with anticipation, and the stakes couldn't be higher. At the heart of the controversy, a single question: who is Christ? Was he fully divine, fully human, or both? The debate was sparked by a man named Arius, who argued that Christ was created by God and therefore not co-eternal with him. To many, this idea threatened the very foundation of Christian faith. Opposing him stood Athanasius, a fiery defender of Christ's divinity, who proclaimed, "If Christ is not truly God, then our salvation is in vain." The tension in the room was palpable as bishops took sides, some swayed by Arius's reasoning, others standing firm with Athanasius. The verdict: after days of heated debate, the council reached a conclusion that would shape Christianity for centuries. They affirmed that Christ is of the same essence as the Father, fully divine and fully human. This declaration became the Nicene Creed, a cornerstone of Christian orthodoxy. But the decision didn't end the controversy. Arius's followers persisted, and the church faced years of division and conflict, a broader divide. But theological debates weren't the only challenge. A cultural rift threatened to tear the church apart. Jewish Christians, steeped in the traditions of the Mosaic Law, clashed with Gentile converts who saw no need to adopt these customs. Should Gentiles be circumcised? Should they follow dietary laws? These questions weren't just about practice. They were about identity. One of the most pivotal moments came in Acts 15, at the Council of Jerusalem. Here, the apostles gathered to settle the dispute. Peter stood and recounted his vision of a sheet filled with unclean animals, declaring, "God, who knows the heart, showed that he accepted the Gentiles by giving them the Holy Spirit, just as he did to us." His words shifted the tide, leading the apostles to conclude that Gentiles could follow Christ without the burden of the law. Pause for a moment. Imagine being part of this intense period of history. What would you have thought? Would you side with those holding to tradition, or with those advocating for a new path? These weren't just academic debates. They were battles for the soul of the church. So, here's a question for you. Do you think these fiery debates strengthened or weakened the early church? Were they a crucible that forged unity, or a storm that nearly destroyed it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. These debates, as contentious as they were, laid the foundation for what the church would become. They forced early Christians to confront their differences and find a way forward. In doing so, they crafted a faith that could transcend cultures, nations, and centuries. But this is only part of the story. The early church's journey was far from over. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the critical decisions that turned division into unity and ensured the survival of Christianity against all odds. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And if this exploration has sparked your curiosity, don't forget to like and share this video. Let's keep the conversation going. Together, we can uncover the fascinating layers of our shared history. Part 3. The pivotal decisions that shaped unity. Imagine standing in a room buzzing with tension. The air is thick with debate. Voices clash, ideas collide, and the future of a movement hangs by a thread. This was the reality of the early church as it grappled with decisions that would either shatter its fragile unity or lay the foundation for its global influence. What were these pivotal moments, and how did they shape the course of history? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll gain a deeper appreciation for the decisions that define Christianity. The Council of Jerusalem, a decision that changed everything. Let's journey back in time to a moment that defined the trajectory of the early church, the Council of Jerusalem. Picture the scene, a room filled with tension, a gathering of the most influential leaders of the time. Peter, Paul, James, and others, their faces etched with resolve, are about to address a question that could fracture the fledgling movement. The issue at hand, whether Gentile converts to Christianity should be required to follow Jewish law, including practices such as circumcision. For some leaders, these laws were more than mere rules. They were the backbone of Jewish heritage and identity, deeply rooted in centuries of tradition. To abandon them seemed almost sacrilegious, a betrayal of their ancestors' covenant with God. For others, however, these laws represented a burdensome yoke that could alienate new believers and hinder the spread of the gospel. This was no small debate. It was a crossroads, a moment where the early church had to decide whether it would remain tied to its Jewish roots or step boldly into a more inclusive future. Voices that shaped the decision. Amid the heated debate, Peter stood and recounted a vision he had experienced, a vision that would tilt the scales of the argument. In his vision, a sheet filled with animals deemed unclean by Jewish law descended from heaven. A voice declared, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." Peter interpreted this as God's directive to embrace the Gentiles without burdening them with the entirety of Jewish law. Why should we test God by putting on the necks of Gentiles a yoke that neither we nor our ancestors have been able to bear? Peter asked, his voice resonating through the assembly. His words weren't just an appeal to reason. They were a plea for grace and understanding, a recognition that salvation was through faith in Christ, not adherence to a rigid set of laws. Then Paul and Barnabas stepped forward, recounting their missionary journeys among the Gentiles. Their stories painted vivid pictures of transformation, of Gentiles embracing the faith, their lives changed by the message of Christ. These testimonies were living proof that God was at work among the Gentiles, regardless of their adherence to Jewish customs. Finally, James, a pillar of the church in Jerusalem, spoke. Known for his wisdom and deep respect for Jewish tradition, James offered a solution that sought to balance the concerns of both sides. He proposed a compromise. Gentiles would not be required to fully adopt the Mosaic law, but should abstain from practices particularly offensive to Jewish believers, such as eating food sacrificed to idols or consuming blood. A turning point in history. The decision reached at the Council of Jerusalem was monumental. It wasn't just a theological resolution. It was a moment of profound inclusivity. By choosing not to impose Jewish law on Gentile converts, the leaders of the church made a bold statement. The message of Christ was universal, transcending cultural and ethnic boundaries. But this decision wasn't without its risks. By loosening the ties to Jewish law, the church risked alienating some Jewish Christians who felt their traditions were being undermined. It also set the stage for future debates about how to navigate cultural differences within a diverse and rapidly growing community. As we reflect on this pivotal moment, it's worth considering the courage it took for the early church leaders to make such a decision. They chose unity over division, inclusion over exclusion, and faith over rigid adherence to tradition. But what about you? What do you think of this decision? Was it a bold and necessary step toward inclusion, or was it a risky compromise that could have fractured the church? Do you see echoes of this debate in modern discussions about faith and tradition? Let's discuss in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you've enjoyed this exploration of one of the most defining moments in church history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insights into the fascinating story of the early church. Stay curious and keep exploring the roots of faith, the councils that solidified doctrine. Fast forward to the 4th and 5th centuries. The church had grown, but with growth came new challenges. Questions about Christ's nature, was he fully divine, fully human, or both, sparked fierce debates. Enter the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Imagine a room filled with bishops from across the Roman Empire, some bearing scars from persecution. At stake was the very identity of Christ. The controversy centered on Arius, a priest who argued that Jesus was created by God and thus not co-eternal with him. This view threatened to fracture the church. Under the leadership of Emperor Constantine, the council declared that Christ was of the same substance as the Father, affirming his divinity. The Nicene Creed was born, a statement of faith that remains foundational to Christianity. But the debates didn't end there. Decades later, the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD tackled another question. How could Christ be both fully divine and fully human? The answer, the doctrine of the hypostatic union, affirmed that Jesus' two natures were united in one person. These decisions weren't merely theological. They were essential for maintaining unity amid diversity. Imagine being in those councils. Would you have supported these decisions or challenged them? Let us know in the comments. Cultural integration. Doctrine wasn't the only battleground. As Christianity spread, it encountered diverse cultures with their own beliefs and practices. The church faced a dilemma. How much of these cultures could be integrated without compromising the faith? One striking example is the adoption of local festivals and symbols. Christmas, celebrated on December 25th, coincided with pagan winter solstice festivals. Rather than outlawing these traditions, the church repurposed them, transforming them into celebrations of Christ's birth. This strategy allowed the faith to take root in new soil, demonstrating adaptability without losing its core message. But this approach wasn't without critics. Some argued it diluted the faith, while others saw it as a genius move to ensure survival and growth. What do you think? Was this cultural integration a compromise or a clever strategy? The role of leadership. Behind these decisions were leaders with vision and courage. Figures like Augustine, who reconciled faith with philosophy, and Gregory the Great, who sent missionaries to distant lands, played crucial roles in shaping the church's direction. Their actions remind us that unity often requires bold leadership willing to take risks and make tough calls. As we reflect on these pivotal moments, one thing becomes clear. The early church's unity wasn't a given. It was hard-fought, the result of courageous decisions and unwavering faith. These leaders didn't shy away from controversy. They faced it head-on, guided by a vision of a church that could transcend divisions. Now it's your turn. Which decision do you think was most crucial in uniting the early church? Do you see parallels in today's challenges? Share your insights in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Ancient Faith Explorations, for more deep dives into church history. Together, let's uncover the stories that shaped our faith. The story of the early church is a testament to the fact that unity doesn't come easily. It is not a given. It is forged in the fires of challenges, shaped through intense debates, and solidified by courageous, often painful decisions. The early Christians faced questions that threatened to fracture their community, yet they emerged with a stronger, more inclusive vision of faith. These pivotal moments didn't just preserve the church. They defined it, shaping the foundations of Christian doctrine and the enduring legacy of faith that we know today. But what about us? These ancient struggles hold lessons for modern believers, reminding us that unity requires effort, humility, and a willingness to engage with differing perspectives. The early church's journey challenges us to ask, how can we, too, strive for a unity that embraces diversity without compromising the essence of our faith? Your turn to reflect. What are your thoughts on these early controversies? Do you see echoes of these struggles in modern Christianity? Perhaps the debates over culture, doctrine, or inclusion still resonate today in surprising ways. We'd love to hear your perspective, so join the conversation in the comments below. If you found this journey into the history of the early church enlightening, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Ancient Faith Explorations. Together, we'll continue uncovering the stories of faith, courage, and perseverance that still inspire and challenge us today. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the early church's struggles and triumphs. As we've seen, understanding the past doesn't just enrich our knowledge, it illuminates the path forward. So, as we close, let's carry these lessons with us, using them to guide our own journey of faith and unity. Until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.